shared, I want to go ahead and get us started. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lindsay Griffin, and welcome to the Black Fertility panel of Community Conversation. I will be the moderator for today's event, but let me first share a little bit about myself. I wear many hats. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, currently the group facilitator for RAD Fertility's monthly patient support group, a PhD candidate, a therapist, an adjunct instructor, a wife, and a mom. I am a mom because of in vitro fertilization, IVF. I always wanted a family and children at the time that would be right for me. I got married, bought a house, and I was getting settled in my career before we started trying to have children. Then I was diagnosed with infertility, courtesy of stage 4 endometriosis. Going through the process of IVF was emotionally draining, but rewarding. I am incredibly fortunate to have 2 amazing little boys from this process. My life is dedicated towards pursuing reproductive justice for all and making sure everyone can have access to the resources and supports to decide if and when to become a parent and to parent in safe and healthy environments. Reproductive justice is making sure that everyone has access to all needed services to support their reproductive health and reproductive goals. It is my pleasure and honor to moderate this important conversation today. Before we begin, I would like to say a few acknowledgments. First off, thank you, RAD Fertility, for sponsoring this event and partnering with me to bring this event to fruition. RAD Fertility is a proud member of the CCRM Fertility Network, whose Black Fertility Matters campaign inspired the idea for this conversation. I will talk more about the Black Fertility Matters campaign shortly. I would also like to extend a warm thank you to Appoquinimink Library for granting us permission to utilize their beautiful facility to host this event. Lastly, and most importantly, I want to thank our panel members who willingly gave their time to come today to speak about their experiences. Representative Kendra Johnson, Latoya Brathwaite-Washington, Tanera Willis, and thank you to Ashley Contra from RAD Fertility for coming to discuss a provider viewpoint on reproductive health. June means a lot of things to different people. June is World Infertility Awareness Month, and in just a few days we will be celebrating Juneteenth, the annual celebration to commemorate when slavery ended. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 1 in 6 people worldwide will experience infertility. And I'd like to note, during times of enslavement in the United States, Black women oftentimes endured inhumane treatment and a variety of horrendous reproductive experiences. Maternal mortality and infant mortality were common. Unfortunately, Black women have stark outcomes when it comes to maternal and infant mortality to this day. Reproductive health disparities continue to impact Black individuals in the United States. According to the most recent reports on infertility statistics, Black women are up to 2 times more likely to have difficulties with getting pregnant compared to other racial categories of women. Black women are also more likely to experience a miscarriage, or what I refer to as a pregnancy loss. Despite these statistics, studies show that Black women and couples are 50% less likely to seek and receive care when trying to grow their families. This brings me to discussing CCRM's Black Fertility Matters campaign, which there is a one-sheeter if you have not had the chance to grab it. But last year, in 2023, CCRM Fertility released the results of a nationwide survey on Black fertility. I will highlight a few of the findings, but you are also able to review the one-sheet summary of the survey. From the survey of 1,000 responses from Black individuals across the nation, 35% reported they were concerned with their fertility, and 37% reported having a miscarriage. I want to note that this statistic shows that there is a higher likelihood that Black individuals, Black women, will have a pregnancy loss because the typically touted statistic around miscarriage is 1 in 4. When asked about their experiences in fertility treatment and seeking fertility treatment, over a quarter, 26%, reported they felt racial cultural bias when seeking fertility treatment, and 48% of respondents reported they would feel more comfortable seeking fertility treatments with someone of the same ethnicity. I'd like to note only 3% of all practicing reproductive endocrinologists, fertility specialist doctors, are of African American descent. When considering challenges and barriers related to fertility, nearly 31% of respondents reported having a lack of education around fertility and fertility treatment options, and nearly 40% reported that they did not feel comfortable talking about their fertility with their healthcare provider. In light of these two statistics, I felt compelled to bring the conversation to the community to highlight the voices and experiences of Black individuals who have navigated the challenges of growing their families. And this is why we are here today. I'm so pleased and honored to now introduce you to the panel members who will be sharing their stories, experiences, and knowledge with you. So I will go through and read their bios. Representative Kendra Johnson. Kendra L. Johnson has dedicated her entire career to serving individuals living with disadvantages and life challenges. Having been born and raised in the city of Chester in an extended family environment, it was through that experience where she learned the value of service to others. Kendra earned a master's degree in human services from Lincoln University. After graduation, Kendra assumed a role of executive director for one of the nation's oldest and most prestigious nonprofit organizations in the United States. Kendra has a history of being an active and engaged servant leader who is constantly in the trenches with her teams, leading by example by demonstrating the desired behaviors which enhance the experiences of the vulnerable individuals that were served under her leadership. Kendra has been the state representative of the 5th District, my home district, in Delaware since 2018 and is the current chair of the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus. In April 2024, Kendra introduced HB 374, a bill aimed at securing access to fertility treatments in Delaware by establishing legal safeguards for providers offering such services. Please welcome Representative Johnson. And before I proceed, Rep. Johnson, is there anything else that you would like to share?
That's enough. Thank you.
All right. LaToya Brathwaite Washington, and you know your name is a little bit of a tongue twister, but I love you anyhow, is a board-certified family nurse practitioner with over 15 years of experience in pediatrics, family practice, and public health. She is the founder and lead practitioner of Mother, Baby, and Beyond, LLC, a community healthcare practice providing postpartum healthcare and early parenting support to expectant and new mothers and families of children birth to 3. Mother, Baby, and Beyond also provides health care through maternal screening and referral to services through community pop-up clinics throughout the state of Delaware in partnership with the Delaware Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. LaToya also serves as a nurse consultant for Newcastle County's Community Health Services to provide expertise, education, support, and advocacy for the good and well-being of the citizens of Newcastle County and throughout the entire state of Delaware. Outside of her career, her heart belongs to her family. She has 2 miracle daughters, ages 12 and 15, who are her pride and joy. In her free time, she enjoys reading, writing, traveling, and spending time with family and friends. So please welcome LaToya. Anything extra you would like to share?
No, I think that was good. Thank you.
All right. Tanera Willis is the founder of the amazing author catalog and book fairs. These initiatives focus on improving literacy and providing diverse titles to school, home, and family-based organizations. In addition to her role as a retail entrepreneur, she is a motivational speaker, coach, and mentor with a special interest in empowering women and teen girls. Through her workshops and coaching sessions, Tanera not only inspires, but also equips them with practical resources, tools, and access to enhance their personal and professional lives. Lastly, Tanera is a woman who suffers with infertility and has committed herself to being a lifelong advocate and supporter of families struggling with infertility. Welcome, Tanera. And last but definitely not the least, Ashley Contra is a valued member of the RAD Fertility team, bringing a wealth of experience and personal connection to her role as a physician associate. Passionate about educating patients on how their overall health and wellness impact their fertility, Ashley is committed to supporting them throughout their journey from start to finish. She believes that personal growth is the greatest accomplishment. Ashley is dedicated to addressing disparities in reproductive health and raising awareness. As a panelist for this event, Ashley aims to contribute to the important community conversation by sharing her insights and experiences to help others grow their families. Welcome, Ashley. All right, so welcome and thank you again to our panel members. We will now move forward with our prepared questions for the panel. And at the end of the prepared questions, we will have time for audience Q&A. So, this first question is going to go to Representative Johnson, Latoya, and Tamara. Can you please describe at what point you thought about becoming a parent? And if you want to just start from one end to the other.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Lindsay, and RAD Fertility, Appoquinimink Library for this opportunity. So to answer your first question, I would say I've always known I wanted to be a parent. I've worked with kids my whole life. As I watched this mom walk in here with this baby, it took me back to my childhood. I was that kid in church, like as soon as I saw the babies, I'm running around, like, can I hold your baby? So I've always loved children. I started babysitting at 12. I was a pediatric nurse for 12 years before pivoting to, maternal health care. So I've always been a nurturer. So I wanted to have children. I don't think I ever really thought about when I wanted to have children or when I wanted to become a mother. I did know I wanted to finish my education first. That was a priority in our household, right? So you had to finish school, and I knew that I wanted to do that. But then I was kind of okay with whenever it happened after that. It did happen a lot sooner than I expected. I was 22 and I was right out of college, but we'll probably get into this a little later, but I'd already experienced a pregnancy loss by that point. So I was excited to be a mother, and it'll be 16 years that little one has made me a mother this year, so that's me.
So, wow, thanks for having me, and thank you all for putting this conversation together. I think it is so very important, and I can honestly say that as a Black woman, conversations about fertility or infertility wasn't anything that was happening in my home or in my community. So I'm just beyond honored to be here today, and I'm like listening to y'all's bio. I'm like, ooh, yes, these ladies, yes. So I've known since I was probably like 14 years old that I wanted to be a mom. I don't know why. I just knew I wanted to be a mother. I knew I wanted to have 3 children, and their names were going to be Janie, James, and John. It's just bizarre. Why I knew that is beyond me. But those names were important to me back during that time because they were names of friends of mine. So my best girlfriend, her name is Janie. James, may he rest in peace. He was my very first crush. Yes, so I don't know if I thought I was going to have his child or I don't know what was going on there. And then John was a cousin of mine who had passed away. So I just always knew. I just didn't know why. I was just like, I'm going to be a mom and I'm going to have 3 kids. And that was that. And who would know that at some point I would learn you may or may not become a mom. But I won't go too far into it because I know we'll get into it deeper. So there you have it.
So I'm excited to be here as well. I'm excited to be amongst this panel and be in the room with you guys. Thanks for listening to our stories and what we had to contribute. It's amazing to be able to have a testimony that makes someone else's test a little less painful, a little less lonely. So that's why I have committed myself to be a lifelong advocate for families going through this journey. I think I was the stereotypical little kid, similar to like the lady said. I wanted the husband, the dog, the 2 kids, and white picket fence. I imagined my wedding as a child. And like the representative, I had names for my kids. I will not share them. They were very ratchet. I'm so glad I wasn't a teenage mom and assigned those names to my kids. I'm excited I made it past that. But I knew I didn't want to be a single mom, so dating, I never, I wasn't in a rush to be a parent. I knew I wanted to be married. I wanted to, raise my child once I was financially secure. So to answer the question, once we were married, we knew we wanted to spend a few years just learning each other, traveling, growing, fulfilling some of our ambitions. So maybe about 3 years into our marriage, we knew that it was time that we wanted to start planning and start, trying to have a child.
Thank you. So these next couple of questions are going to be for Rep. Johnson and Tanera. So first one is, can you talk about how you learned that you would need a fertility specialist to get pregnant? So I will have Rep. Johnson first.
Okay, sure. I was either 15 or 16 years old. I had gone to Planned Parenthood. And shout out to Planned Parenthood. I have loved them ever since then. I went to Planned Parenthood, wasn't feeling well. They did an exam, and the outcome of that exam was they thought I had a cyst on my ovary. So I go home, and it's like, all right, I need to follow up with, they're like, follow up with your GYN. So I follow up with the GYN. I give them the paper, like, yeah, you got the cyst on your ovary. So, okay, we're going to have to do, this was way back in the day, y'all, when they cut you from hip to hip. It's very different today. So at 15 years old, I go to have this surgery to have this cyst removed, only to be told after the fact, after the surgery, that I did not have a cyst. What I had and was suffering from was pelvic inflammatory disease. Exactly. And so when I came to, and the doctor shared that with me, and think about it, I was 15 years old. And then he shared with me the condition of my fallopian tubes. And he said to me, imagine a straw that has holes all in it, and all you want to do is drink, and you can't. And he said that is the condition of your tubes, and you will not get pregnant. I was 15. I knew I wanted to be a mom for forever, and it was absolutely devastating because not only was I suffering from the stuff that teenagers go through. I'm black. I live in Chester. I don't love myself. I'm suffering, with issues of self-esteem, just all kinds of stuff going on. And then that gets piled on. So the one reason why I believe I am here and what I'm supposed to do as a woman, I can't do. And I carried it. Had to carry it. I had to carry that bag with me from the time I was 15 years old up until I ultimately had my children, and that bag went with me from relationship to relationship, always feeling like I wasn't enough because I couldn't do the one thing that I ought to be able to do naturally. So there it is.
Yeah, focus on you today.
I told myself that I was just going to be completely transparent.
Absolutely.
And I remember telling my friends back then what happened to me. And so I ended up with the pelvic inflammatory disease, and we all grown in here. is because as a young person I had sex, and I had unprotected sex, which then meant I got an STD, which then at that time had medications and all those other things, but apparently it resolved enough, but it was still in my body. And it was in my body, just tearing my little body apart. And I just would tell my friends, I'm like, don't let this be you. Like, let me be, this is what I went through because I didn't protect myself. So this is what you need to do to make sure you protect yourself.
Well, how amazing is that you had the wherewithal at 15 to advocate for your friends and be transparent. That's amazing. That's very remarkable. I think, like I said, my husband and I were about 3 years in our marriage. We weren't using any kind of protection against pregnancy, and we hadn't gotten pregnant. Again, we weren't trying, but we knew that was kind of like weird. Like, we doing what needs to be done to get pregnant, but nothing's happening. So I think we weren't in a rush then. I would think I was about 32, 33. I went to visit my OBGYN or whatever my standard appointment was and shared, they asked those questions, how old are you? Are you having sex? Are you on birth control? Yada, yada, yada. And then I shared, like, well, no, I'm not. And right then, he said, well, you should go see a reproductive endocrinologist. Never heard of a reproductive endocrinologist at that time. I didn't have anybody in my family that I knew had any type of reproductive health issues, infertility issues, never probably even heard the term, and I was a registered nurse at that time. But I went to the reproductive endocrinologist. I don't want to say reluctantly, but definitely shamefully. I remember I was going to Colchester Medical Center, which is my hometown, so I didn't know the reference exactly. But being from Chester, it's a small city. If you're from a small city, everyone knows everybody. So, and everyone works at the local businesses. So everyone I knew worked at the hospital. So I remember going through the halls hiding, trying not to be seen, and trying to duck in the elevator and not wanting to get off on the floor, not wanting people to know where I was going. And I remember, and it's crazy, as much as I was hiding, when I walked in the office, one of my cousins worked as a fertility specialist, so I remember feeling shame. And I remember the first visit, my husband and I were there, and the doctor automatically assumed my husband was the reason we weren't able to get pregnant. He kind of went in on him. It was very uncomfortable for both of us based on his assessment that day. He's like, it's likely you, yada, yada, yada. And only to find out after he did his testing and sperm analysis and sperm count and all those different things that he was good. So I felt like now the target is on my back and on my back big. And I did. I felt, you feel guilty, you feel ashamed. It was because of scarred fallopian tubes. It was before an infection that I had from an abortion. Didn't take the antibiotics after the abortion, young, 17. And wound up getting scarred fallopian tubes. And at that time, the doctor told me that it was a chance because they were partially scarred, not fully scarred. And I was in my early 30s. And he gave me an option and said, you can wait. It's still a chance that you can get pregnant unassisted, or you could start the care. And at that point, we decided to start the infertility care.
Thank you both. So I'll be throwing in my little comments, but hearing both of your stories together, and I know your stories there, but really hearing like Rep. Johnson, it goes to show why it is so important that young people have education about protecting their bodies. Because when we have education, we can make more informed decisions. And we can bring the taboo out of it. So I was like, if you're going to engage in sexual activity at 14, 15, 16 years old, that you're doing so safely. So next question for Rep. Johnson and Tanera. Can you talk some about what the overall process was like with going to a fertility provider for you? Let's switch up. Yeah, let's go ahead, Tanera.
Okay. Emotionally, again, it was shameful. It was embarrassing. It was scary. It was costly. It was lonely. It was isolating. And physically, it was taxing. Mentally, it was taxing. The timelines, the schedule, the rules, the medicines, the hours, the scheduled sex, the injection, the procedures. So it's a lot. It's overwhelming, and it's even more so when you're going through it alone. And a lot of people go through it alone, not because they have to, almost as a choice, or you feel so much responsibility and grief and embarrassment that it ends up that way. I do have a very supportive family, but that's just something we didn't talk about. I never heard the conversations. I never had the questions. So it wasn't one like, that you felt uncomfortable opening. So it was lonely again. At that point, my husband and I didn't have an employer or insurance that covered it, so it was costly. We paid out of pocket for the treatment, for the medications, for the co-pays. So it was a lot, I guess, to sum it up.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep, it was a lot. So I think it cost about $25,000. And my twins, my babies, they are 20 years old now. And so, there was no insurance that was going to pay for it. So that, when folks get married, so my husband and I, we got married in 2000. And, everybody's married and they're happy and they got their house fund, right? You're saving your money for your house. I didn't have a house fund. I had a baby fund, right? Because I've always known. So I got a baby fund. So all the money is going into the baby fund. And so finally, I think we were married for 4 years. And my husband has always known, I told him from day one, I want children, and I'm going to get them. I don't think he believed me. I really don't. He wanted a red truck. Let's just say I got my babies. So I actually, the first fertility specialist I went to was at Chester Crozier. It was Dr. Elroy.
Yes.
But at that time I was 25-ish or younger than that. It was with my first husband. And luckily, I was smart enough to know I wasn't ready. Then, so with my second husband, then I was 34 years old, and I'm like, that clock is ticking. Those eggs are getting old. I better do something. So I ended up going to Abington Reproductive Medicine. My GYN in Chester, Dr. Labor. I mean, because, everybody sees the same one. So he sent me to Abington, and I went to Abington Reproductive Medicine. My doctors was Barmat and Shenfield and some other
Dr.
names.
Barmat, is that right now?
What?
Yes.
Shut up! Oh, my God. Okay, all right. So I love Dr. Barmat, okay? So he made my babies. So while I was there, I just felt like they really cared for me. They never made me feel weird or anything. I love Dr. Barmat. Just his bedside manner, everything. I loved everyone in that office. Prime example, one of the ladies in the office, she was a nurse. Her name is Joan. I can't remember her last name. How about Joan and I are friends on Facebook? So it's like that relationship started way back then. So while I carried the baggage for so many years of guilt and shame, I had to allow my hope to be bigger than that. I had to. And I am a Christian. And what I believed is this, that God will make a way. What I also knew is who I was back then. That 15-year-old little girl didn't love herself, suffering from low self-esteem. So for as painful as it was a gift for me to not be able to get pregnant. And I tell people jokingly, but this is my truth. I say, if I was able to get pregnant naturally, I would have 5 babies and 4 different baby daddies perpetuating the same type of treatment that I experienced as a young person. So I say, look at God. So, yeah, I couldn't lay down to do that, but God was like, if you want it, I'm going to make a way. He made ways. I worked. I saved. I got better jobs. I got, master's degrees, and I saved, and we did it. And then when we finally got to that point, because again, fear, shame, everything, I created a mantra for myself. Because when you're going through it, you're like, it may not happen. And it's not going to happen to me because I did this to myself, and I shouldn't have done it. And I was like, nope, no more stinking thinking. And every single day I sang that song to myself. In between putting shots in my stomach, no more stinking thinking. In between literally sitting out all of the needles and the medication, 6 o'clock, okay, 6:01, all of that, okay? In between getting my husband's sperm, putting it in a cup, putting it in my boobs, and driving like a bat out of hell to Abington, because you only got 45 minutes to get those babies up there, right? You got to keep them warm. And the whole time, no more stinking thinking, because I just believe that what you put in here eventually comes in here. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And I was so blessed because I had been transparent with my family and with my friends. One of my girlfriends, she actually worked for me at the time. I was her supervisor. I told her when I was going to start. When my husband wasn't able to go to the hospital with me for the retrieval and things like that, my girlfriend drove me. She drove me. She went with me. We were there the entire time. So thank God by the time I got to that point, my head was right and I was ready and my heart was right. My money was right. But it's a lot. You gotta totally and completely commit to it. Like I remember, I forgot the name of the medication. You start with I think maybe birth control pills first because they got to regulate you, right? And this science is just so fascinating. I'm like, for people who can just lay down and get pregnant, y'all the it. I'm just saying, okay? Because I'm like, you have to think about everything that has to be perfect to make that happen. So they give you birth control pills, and they, Then after they give you birth control pills, they give you this cancer medication to shut everything down because now they're going to tell your body what to do and when to do it, right? And your body's like, okay. From injections to get more eggs, from injections to release the eggs, like all of it is so precise. Like you got to be here at this time and do this at this time. And if you misstep, it's a wrap. So I was ready. I was crazy. I was like, we're going to do this. I gave myself shots in my butt. Like, who does that? Well, you want it bad enough, you do it. And so the entire time, I never thought, I'm not going to do this. I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to have my babies, and all is going to be well. So whatever it took to get there, I was going to do it. And I did it. So my mind helped me make it a great experience, even though that's a lot of stuff to go through and to put your body through. So shout out to Dr. Barman.
Megan, you're going to have to tell
Oh, yeah, and he'll remember me, too. So this is just too much, but I'm going to tell y'all. So, God's blessings. So, and going through fertility and having your eggs retrieved and stuff, like, folks, it's not like you're going to get 100 eggs, right? I've known friends that I worked with who got like 4 viable eggs, or 5, or 2. When I tell y'all, they retrieved 26 eggs. Yeah, 26. They were like, that's unheard of. 26 eggs, that's a lot. They retrieved 26 and 19 turned into embryos. So God was like, I got you, girl. We're going to make this happen. And that was one of the ways that the nurse and I bonded, because she was like, honey, you're just a rabbit. Who does that? But there's my story.
I love it. Folks that work with me, I always talk about, like, it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. But I love how you talk about, like, having a mantra, like, what keeps you centered, and that's what I always talk about, like, what keeps you centered and keeps you going.
Absolutely.
Because you could decide, you know what, I'm done at any point in time, any point in the process. And like you said, it is a commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want to go talk to Latoya, because as she mentioned, she had a history of pregnancy loss. So I wanted to see if you could share a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, sure. So I have to express my gratitude again for the invitation to this panel and a seat at the table, literally and figuratively, because people often, and I told myself I would be transparent as well, so hopefully I don't have a breakdown. I get through this.
I got tissue.
Yes, but we it gets a little happier in the end. But people often think about infertility as only the inability to get pregnant. Whether it's because of, the male factor or female factor, like, Tanara talked about. But they don't consider how many women get pregnant time and time again and can't carry babies to term. And the trauma and the pain that comes with that comes with multiple losses, right? And I have a lot of friends who've not only gone through IVF or maybe couldn't go that route, but lost babies through IVF or lost babies just through miscarriage time and time again, and weren't able to become mothers. And IVF is a technology that, has been really God sent, right? Like I always say, I'm a nurse practitioner now, and I believe that science, medicine, God, it all works together, right? And I think that God uses medicine and doctors as another vehicle to bring miracles, right? And so IVF is one of those miracles that helps couples and moms become families. And in my case, it was the NICU. It was the NICU that allowed me to have my miracle babies. That was the technology that saved my girls. So to take you guys through my timeline, like I mentioned, before my first daughter, I had a miscarriage. And that was a loss where they actually had to go in and do a D&C, where they go and they remove the tissue because you don't pass everything. And then I got pregnant with my daughter in 2008. And I was really excited. I was young, so I was terrified. I was a new nurse. I was just out of college. But I knew I wanted to be a mother, so I was excited. I was going to do this. My family is West Indian. I'm from Trinidad, so I've always been blessed that they've been super supportive. It's very community oriented. So my mom, when I told my mom and my dad, they were like, we're going to figure it out and, do what we need to do. So I would say right around 26-ish weeks, it was probably started before that, but I was just having a lot of headaches, started having bruising on my arms. And I went in for my 28-week visit, and they did my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was through the roof. And I was going to the birth center because I had a whole plan, y'all. Like, I was going to have a water birth, and it was going to be natural, and it was going to be all these things. And she was like, yeah, I need you to go to Christiana and, go straight there. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. No, you can't go home and get clothes. You need to go to the hospital. And I didn't really understand why. Got there, and long story short, I had preeclampsia with HELLP syndrome. I was very sick, and they had to emergently deliver my daughter at 28 weeks, and she spent 2.5 months in the NICU. So the silver lining, right, is she was my miracle baby. At the end of those 2.5 months, I was able to bring her home, and it was great. Right, and then there was some time that had elapsed, and I met my husband, and we weren't married at the time, but we weren't doing anything for protection. Ended up having 2 additional pregnancy losses. So got pregnant, excited, miscarriage, pregnant, excited, miscarriage. And it's so hard on a couple. It's hard on a family. We talk about the shame and the guilt, and that comes with infertility. And I felt so much shame. I felt so much shame because I felt like my body couldn't do what it was supposed to do. I couldn't carry these babies, even with my daughter. I blamed myself because she was 28 weeks. I felt like it was my fault because I couldn't carry her to term. So then got pregnant again with my daughter, who is here now. So that was after, at this point, I'd had 3 pregnancy losses, had my baby, and I knew. So to the point of, the PTSD that sometimes comes with this pregnancy, I was like terrified. Like, I'm on watch now for every little thing. And again, it was right around 23, 24 weeks, I started having headaches. And that's usually the first sign, like when your blood pressure is really high with preeclampsia, you'll start to have headaches. The bruising is one of the signs of HELLP syndrome because you have low platelets. So I started the bruising again, and I just knew. And I was like, oh, God, here we go again. Went to the doctor. They tested my urine, found protein. That's another one of the signs. My blood pressure was up. So I was admitted again. This time I was a little bit of a terrier, right? The first time I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what to do with me. I was like, y'all not taking this baby. I need my steroids for her to get her lungs to grow. Like, I was putting my foot down with my first daughter. I was by myself because they didn't give me time, right, for my family to get there. With my second daughter, I was like, no, like, somebody's got to be here. I'm not going in that delivery room by myself. All of the things. But I wasn't able to prevent the prematurity and the progression of that preeclampsia again. So my second daughter was born at 26 weeks. She was 1 pound, 9 ounces. My first daughter, that was born at 28 weeks, I didn't tell y'all, she was born at 1 pound, 13 ounces. So when I say medical miracles and my miracle babies, they really are. So my little one, she spent 2 months in the NICU, and again, thank God for the doctors, the neonatologists, the nurses, the technology that we have. I was able to bring that baby home as well. And then several years after that, I got pregnant again. I was on birth control for a while, and then was temporarily off, got pregnant again, and was hoping for a successful pregnancy. Around when I should have been 8 weeks pregnant, I started spotting, went to the hospital, and this time I found out it was an ectopic pregnancy. So I had a pregnancy in my tube, and the reason I was spotting was because the tube had ruptured and I was having internal hemorrhaging. So they had to rushed me to the emergency room and removed that tube. And at that point, the doctors took it out of my hand. They were like, so you can't get pregnant anymore. This is not going to be an option for you. We are going to schedule you now to get the other tube removed. So I think I was scheduled, it was like 3 to 6 months. I want to say it was about 3 months after that tubal rupture and removal. I went back and had the other tube removed. So, that effectively ended my fertility after that second tube removal. And, I'm so grateful, right, for my children and for the miracles that they are. But it wasn't a choice I got to make, right? Like that was taken from me. And so I do, Tanara has a book. She may speak to it. I see her with it. It's called Memoirs of an Almost Barren Woman. And I really, 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 really connect with that title because that's always how I felt, like almost infertile, right? Like, no, I didn't have to go through IVF and all of the things, but that almost barren or that almost infertile, that was how I felt. So that's my story. And my girls, yes.
And I've been at other conferences where LaToya spoke, and she was one of those near misses. The fact that she's here today with her girls is also a miracle. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing, because look, I had a pregnancy loss between my boys, and it's like you start thinking about it and all those feelings come up. And that's why I say, like, their stories are so important, and the bravery that they demonstrate with saying, like, I'm here and I'm going to be real. I ain't going to sugarcoat nothing, and that's why I'm particularly grateful for all of these women up here. Thank you. So you all have already alluded to mental health. You know, that's my main top hat. So as a mental health professional, it is important to highlight the implications of infertility and pregnancy loss on an individual's mental health, along with being a NICU mom. Check that box, too. Studies have suggested that individuals affected by infertility are at risk of anxiety and depressive disorders at a comparable rate of those who are diagnosed with cancer. Studies have also suggested that a portion of individuals who experience pregnancy losses may later develop post-traumatic stress disorder. So what is LaToya talked about, having that PTSD. So how would you describe your personal emotional experiences when going through your fertility experiences? And so that's for Rep. Johnson, LaToya, and Tamara. We'll start with Tamara.
Okay. I definitely think I probably had it all. Definitely still have PTSD. I feel like my anxiety reared its head after I gave birth. Being that I waited so long, it took such a toll and such a cost to have the baby in so many different ways. At the time that I was pregnant, my sister was pregnant with me. We were a month apart. We talked about our pregnancies together every moment. What's your baby doing? What's your doctor saying? What are you eating? What symptoms are you having? My son was due a month before her. I had my baby, and I literally called her every time he blinked. I was super excited, super happy. He's doing this, he's doing that. He probably really wasn't doing anything. For me, it was amazing. And I couldn't wait for my sister to have her baby the following month. Fast forward, she wound up losing her baby. So I think the process that I took to have my child and then my sister losing her baby created an anxiety in me that made me super helicopter mom. I was obnoxious. I was very authoritative. Everywhere he went, there were rules, there were guidelines, there was even a binder. So what he ate, who he could be around, how you handled him, all of those things. I drove my entire family extremely crazy. My husband and I argued a lot. He had to wash his hands when I was timing him. It was just crazy, and that's part of the reason why we don't have a second child. It's like, I'm not doing that with you again. And I had to, that was part of my acceptance, because I was horrible. I was not one of those mothers who would let strangers come up to their child and touch their child. There literally was probably 3 people who could watch him, and again, it came with rules and expectations and sometimes arguments. Like, I don't care how many kids you raised, I don't care how old you it's my baby. There were signs on his stroller, it was intentional. There were signs on the car seat, a yield sign, stop, wash your hands, stop this. I carried hand sanitizer. It was a lot. So that was the anxiety piece. But prior to, like I said, the emotional piece was, I had a bad case of the why needs and comparing myself to other people. I knew so many people, again, growing up in the inner city, abortions was our birth control. It was, we didn't get a lot of education. There was Planned Parenthood. And I remember I have a big family, and a lot of my cousins who were older than me, they were teenage moms, and they did tell me, don't be a teenage mom because of some of the things they told me. But the way they told me not to was like, if you need help, you need money, let me know. Yep. And so it was an opportunity to get out of it. And I know, again, from coming from the inner city and poverty, I didn't want to struggle with my child. I didn't want to be a baby mom. So unfortunately, that was my way of saving myself instead of being proactive, because I didn't have the resources, the tools, the education, the information about, before getting there. So it was tough. I lied to a lot of people because I wasn't comfortable talking about it when they would say, again, they think you're married, you have the house, you have the career, so typically what's next when you guys having a baby? So many people would ask me that. And I would make stuff up and say we're not ready or, different things, but the truth was I couldn't get pregnant on my own. But then there were a few people you like, stop asking me every time you see me. You did after a while or you would tell, I would tell my best friends, please stop telling your family to stop asking me because everybody had kids before me. Most of my friends and family were either teenage moms or had kids in their early 20s, and I was in my early 30s, so they're looking at me like, what's the problem? What are you waiting on? So again, it was a lot of shame. And that was kind of why I wrote the book, because I suffered in silence, I suffered in shame, I suffered in guilt. I have an amazing husband, and I'm like, I wasted my reproductive health on someone who didn't care about me, who didn't value me, who wasn't worth it, and now I have this amazing man, and I can't give him a child. So that was very tough. That was, the guilt, the embarrassment, the shame, the self-blame. But once I got out of it, thank God, I got PTSD, you're never out of it. And I actually did a podcast once, and the lady was telling me that they feel like once you have a baby, you forget about the people who are still going through it, or you forget about the journey, and I'm not sure, I haven't met the person who has forgot about it. So you carry it. But yeah, so the part of my book is because I felt so many people stuck in the grief and stuck in the shame and breaking up marriages and ruining their finances, and even friend relationships were ending because they don't want to go to your baby showers. They don't want to go to your birthday parties. They don't want to celebrate Mother's Day because they're so angry, they're so ashamed, they're so mad, they're so sad, there's so much grief. And I'm like, God doesn't want that for us. And I'm like, even through my journey, I knew there was more to me. I know I wanted to be a mother, but I know that wasn't my only purpose in life. So I wanted to just, get a collection of stories together for people to tell people that there is hope. It is a journey. It can be dark, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And, everybody doesn't get there the same way, but you can get there. And unfortunately, everybody doesn't get to give birth to a child, but you can still nurture, you can still support, you can still rear, you can still mother people without having that. So I kind of wanted to share a lot of different avenues to motherhood, and because we're almost barren, but we can bear fruit outside of having children.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Everything you said, and for me, learning when I was so young, I felt like it was even more intense because this brain of mine wasn't fully developed. And so what I would tell myself about my behavior and how I got there, there was no self-love. But because I had so much time to sit in it, I transitioned from that shame and that guilt. And, like I shared with y'all, 5 babies, 4 different baby daddies. And so, I can laugh about it now, but when I think about it, like that, I really believe that is where I was headed. So by the time I had Ian and Autumn, they're 20 years old now. They turned 20 in May 10th. I was a whopping 36 years old. All of my friends already had babies. My sister, she had her first baby when she was 18. First year in college, she got pregnant. I'm like, I got you. We're going to do this. And then she decided 10 years later she wanted another one. I'm like, honey, you're almost done. So I had been an aunt way before I was anybody's mom. And I was like the best aunt, and I still am. I'm the best nanny ever. So like that gave me the opportunity to do all those things that I thought I would do when I became a mom, because it was always when. And my belief in God and how my life set up, that I was like, I'm going to do this, and I know that I can't hold on to that stuff anymore. Like, let's just get the work done. But I will share, And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking people to use hand sanitizer before they touch your baby. So when you came to my house after I got those babies, hand sanitizer, blanket over you, that you no street, none of that, okay? And it may have been a lot, but people, my family, they get my oddness, and they just went with it. And they just did it. I was very serious about schedules because I read all the books, like, what to expect when you're expecting. I wait my whole life for everything. And I have always been, like, really serious about sleep, y'all. Like, sleep is it. And I also was still very naive, which is hilarious. So my husband has really poor sleeping habits. I have great sleeping habits. Like now, I'm down sleep by 10:30. Everybody knows I start winding down at 8:30. Like I go to sleep. None of that. So I'm like, I got 2 babies. I'm outnumbered. Hey Tom, you don't sleep. You take Ian, I'm going to take Autumn, because the book says at 6 weeks old, we can begin to train them to sleep. Because I'm reading the books, y'all. I'm reading the books. It's a little crazy. I'm reading the books, and that didn't work out. My husband wasn't really good at that, because, it wasn't. But I will share this with you, and this is when I thought something wasn't right. Right after I had the kids in the hospital, I was like, where's my husband? Where's my husband? Where's my husband? He was home sleeping because he has poor sleeping habits, so he'll sleep at any, given time. And he was there when the kids, but I expected him to be right back. We were home one day. He made me some French fries. And the French fries were not fully cooked. And I lost my everlasting mind. The French fries were raw in the middle. How could you do this? It turned into a big old thing. I later learned that I was suffering from postpartum depression. And 20 years ago, people didn't talk about that either. So how is it you want them forever and you get them and your brain and your hormones say F you all at the same time? It was unbelievable. My blessing is that, so with postpartum, it's different for all people. So my blessing was I always loved them, never wanted to harm them, was helicopter mom, all that stuff, but my brain wasn't as sharp as it had been. I couldn't figure out how to, if I wanted to make a meal, and the ground beef was in the freezer downstairs, I didn't have the processing to say the day before, go to the freezer, get the ground beef, put it in the refrigerator. I couldn't do any of those things. And at that time, I was an associate vice president for a nonprofit. And so, I'm trying to put all this stuff together. So the emotions of all of that, the anxiety of wondering if people are going to find out, then also realizing that 20 years ago, people didn't believe that postpartum was a thing, and so I suffered in silence with that. And I remember, I think it was the governor's wife in New Jersey. She had shared her story about postpartum. And that started to normalize it. And then I think Brooke Shields wrote a book. I think it's called Then the Rain Came Down or something like that, right? So I got all of this stuff going on. It's like you worked so hard to get here. How could this happen to me? Why? But again, God is good, right? I'm black, but I believe in behavioral help. I went and I saw a therapist, I got medications, and I still told my story. Because I'm like, nobody is going to suffer needlessly if I have experiences in my life that can help you, and that means from me being a reckless little 15-year-old trying to get her groove on, okay, to me being a 36-year-old woman who finally got pregnant, had her babies, and then got punched down with postpartum. So I was like, I'm not going to hold that shame anymore because I held it for far too long. And so I don't anymore. It is a badge of honor because it gives me the opportunity to share my story with others so they know they are not alone. There you go. That was a lot.
Thank you for sharing. So I guess with me, I concur with a lot of what's already said. You know, you mentioned anxiety, depression, PTSD. I just check. You know, the anxiety piece for me, it was both during the pregnancies, right? Because after having the losses, you carry that anxiety with you into every next pregnancy of, am I going to make it? And it's by the milestones. So 9 weeks, you see the heartbeat. And then the chance of a viable pregnancy, you know, goes up to like close to 90%, right? So I would look for that mark. And then whatever the next, you know, the ultrasound where you could see the baby developing. So like the whole pregnancy was just the anxiety of getting to that next step. And then that anxiety just carried over into their infancy because like was shared, you know, with the obsession with sanitizing and who could be around the babies. And then I had NICU babies. So I came home with babies who were born way before they were supposed to be here. So I really had to be obsessive about who could be around them. I couldn't go to certain family gatherings, right, because I couldn't take the babies with me. And, you know, so that anxiety carried over. And then, the depression. I don't know that I processed it as much with my first daughter. I did have some depression. I saw the signs of it after. But with my second daughter especially, I had severe postpartum depression, anxiety. I gained a lot of weight. Those feelings of failure, it was not resolved. Like I did what I had to do to get her through the NICU, right? But I think in the back of my brain, it was like, this happened again. Like you failed. Now your baby was born even earlier. And I would go to the NICU and I would feel nothing but shame. Like they would talk to me about how great it was that I was there all the time. And I was always by her bedside, right, when I could be. But I just felt like I'd failed, right? And now she's going through this because of me. And so that was really difficult, and that put me in a really negative headspace. The PTSD, right? So the trauma from all of those losses and experiences that also played into, depression. I carried that fear, right? And then also what I think that we don't always talk about, and I don't think it's just me, right? But I would start to have fear for other people's pregnancies. Like when my friends were pregnant, I would be like, you doing this? Like you do, like I'm everybody's OB now. Because now I'm consulting the books. Well, girl, you said you was feeling so and so. I'm texting people. Did you ask your doctor? Nobody asked me, but I'm now monitoring their, I'm monitoring their pregnancies because I'm going to protect you from what happened to me. And, that was a part of my PTSD that I still have to this day. One of my friends just had a baby. And her whole pregnancy, I was, nervous. My cousin had a baby, and then I'm calling them after because I know you have issues after pregnancy. So then I'm calling, are you sure? Do you feel okay? All of the things. And I think that's good, right? Because we do need to check in on moms. Yeah. But I know for me, it also comes from a place of fear and anxiety, right? And then I think in line with that PTSD is like a grief that I always feel because I never had that optimal pregnancy outcome. I never got the belly. Even, one of my best friends went through IVF, and I was so happy for her, and, super excited and all the things. And she, through the miracle of IVF, was able to have the baby shower, and she had the belly and the pregnancy pictures, and I was so happy for her. And I still had grief because I didn't have that. And I didn't have to go through IVF, like I said, right? But I still didn't get that. I wanted the belly. I wanted those pictures. Again, I had all my optimals. I was going to get a belly cast, y'all. I had the plaster kit. Like I had all the things. So, definitely the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, the grief, all of it. And so, again, I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations, because we carry this, we carry it with us, and our family and friends are going through stuff too, and I think when we share these stories, it helps. So, yeah, that was me.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. And as I was hearing your stories, it just, to me, reiterated for why I take the practice approach that I take. Whenever I'm seeing someone that's on the front end trying to get pregnant, I don't drop them the minute they get the positive pregnancy test. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know what's going to happen. I always tell people, I wish I had a crystal ball just for my fertility population. Mm-hmm. Just to be able to say what's going to come next. But that doesn't exist. But the last thing that I'm going to do is drop you where there could be potential that you may not be in a good place, even after a baby comes. Mm-hmm. How you doing? We making sure no postpartum depression. What's your support system like? Mm-hmm. How are you coping? Mm-hmm. How's your sleep? How's the baby eating? Because as you hear these stories, it's not just getting the positive pregnancy mm-hmm. test. We just started another part of the journey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wanted to also ask, what would be some tips or advice for people that are in this journey or at the start of this journey that you may have yourself kind of either look back on and be like, oh, I wish I would have done this, or things that did help you during the time frame that you were going through your fertility journey. So I'll start over with Victoria.
Okay. Well, I have to say I was waiting for this part of the conversation because I feel like this is when we get to a little bit of the hope, right? Right. The things that helped me, and because it was a lot, and it's a lot to share the journey and the story. But when I think back to what helped me, and we've talked about this, the panelists, I very much am a woman of faith, right? So I relied very heavily on my faith through the process, just praying right through each step of the process, praying through the pregnancies, praying through the losses, right, for comfort, for strength. And I know that got me through. Journaling has always been a thing for me. I'm a big journaler, and that helps because my journal doesn't judge me, right? I can just write, and I can say all of the things that are inside, all the shame, all the anger, the frustration. I can pour it out, and that helped me. I have very supportive family and friends, and so I leaned on those people. And I have to caveat this a little bit because we have supportive family and friends, but I think sometimes, to the point that Tanara mentioned, our family and friends try to be helpful by asking things like, oh, when you going to get pregnant? When you going to have the baby? Mm-hmm. And don't realize that they're perpetuating the trauma that you're feeling. So I think even as I say supportive family and friends, I have to caveat that with know who the safe people are. Everybody in your family, everybody in your friend circle aren't the safest people to go through when you're in a place like this, but there are those people. There's usually a person or two that you can go to and just, girl, I'm struggling, or, if you have a supportive partner. And I think with the partners, too, it's important to highlight, the men because, they're going through their own journey, both with infertility and the pregnancy losses. It's a loss for them, too, right? And it's very challenging for them when they see their partners going through, and they feel powerless. Men, they a lot of times feel like their role is to be the fixer, right? And to come in in this case, there's nothing for them to fix with infertility. They can't beat it up. They can't defend you against it. Right. There's nothing for them to do in that sense. So I think leaning on them, allowing them to share, and, sharing with them, I think is helpful. And then there were times in my journey where, supportive family and friends wasn't enough and I needed counseling, right? And that's okay, right? We talk about that it's, okay to not be okay, right? And there were times during my journey where I needed counseling, and that was really helpful for me, as well as times when I used medications, when I had postpartum depression, and it was really significant. I had to do what I needed to do, right? Like I had little kids at home. I had to work. I was working 2 jobs at the time. We have 4 kids in the home. My husband had 2 children, so it was a lot. And I couldn't be, completely incapacitated by my depression. So, the medication, the counseling, they were tools, both natural medications as well as prescription, helped me through that time, right, till I could get to the other side. And then, they talk about exercise, and there would be times I would hear about exercise and just want to throw up because I'm like, I'm tired of people talking about exercise. Who has time for that? But I will say, in defense of exercise, that doesn't always have to look like going to the gym, right? For me, I love to walk and just stroll. So that really helped me when I was going through, to just go for walks, put my headphones in, listen to a song, listen to music, or sometimes I would listen to nothing and just be with my thoughts and just walk and, process my emotions. So those were things that I think I did through those times that really got me through. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Mine are are pretty similar. But what I will add, just in listening to Lindsay, my God, if I had a Lindsay in my life, right, when I was getting pregnant and, had the babies, that my postpartum would have been diagnosed sooner. That if somebody was really calling to check in on me and asking those questions, because I didn't know. I felt weird, but I didn't know. And, I think about it now, it's like, ooh, you had a whole lot of hormones going, a whole lot of hormones to get there. You got there, a whole lot of hormones there, and then in an instant, zoom, they all left. And so left me a hot mess. So the first thing would be, get a Lindsay. Seriously, get a Lindsay. As I've shared, faith. My faith. That's it. Prayer. Lots of prayer. My mantra. Medication and counseling, and being okay with it. Because I think, what did I take? I think I took Lexapro. I think that's what it was. But that I needed it. Like I told y'all, I couldn't figure out how to make spaghetti and meatballs. Like, think about it. Go to the freezer, put it in the refrigerator, I couldn't do any of those things. But after getting diagnosed, seeing my therapist routinely, and having the medications, it let me get over that hump until I was better. I had supportive family and friends. I told you guys about my one friend, this is hilarious though, who was going up to Abington with me. So her name is Kimmy. We were on the golf course one day, because we did a big golfing thing every year with our employer. And she said to me, she was like, Camry, I didn't get my period. I always get my period. Y'all, why our babies are 1 month apart? So she taking me to Abington to get pregnant, and she ended up getting pregnant. Wild, So we literally went through the whole pregnancy together. But yeah, faith, prayer, counseling, family if you can, and like you said, knowing who the right, family members are, because I had those same questions. When y'all gonna get pregnant, right? I told y'all I was 36, so if I was 36, my husband was 40. So they're looking at us sideways, like, don't you think you need to do this? So you have to know who those safe people are, right? That's it. I don't have anything else to add.
In contrast to Missouri said she couldn't wait for this part. Not me. I feel it's so difficult to tell people how to get through this, because I feel like everybody's journey is so layered, so individualized. It's tough. So I like to tell people how I did it, and hopefully you can pull something from that. But I like every person's story. There's similarities, but there's also so many individual aspects of it that it's kind of hard to say, this is how you get through this, or this is how you navigate this journey. But for me, journaling definitely was one of my key pieces. Your journey, I guess, get to be unashamed in your journey. You get to be honest in your journey. You don't have anyone that makes you feel minimize your feelings. So the journaling helped me, and that's how the book came about, because I had all these stories and all these experiences in my journey. So journaling definitely helps. I definitely think having a core group of people who you can talk to. I told everybody a little bit pieces, whenever I felt safe to say a little bit, but I never felt comfortable telling everyone everything. So definitely, but I think that harmed me, keeping it all to myself. So I definitely think push through those fears and those things, and make sure you share with your core people, because they can better support you, equip you, and help you through it. And if it's possible, I would say get an infertility partner. I told you guys, even though I was sneaking to doctor's visits, not only did my cousin work there, but I had a family member who was there for infertility, and she didn't tell anybody either. So we became each other's allies through the journey, and we was able to talk about what's next and what our plan was and what we were, experiencing. We both, like my husband was there, she was married, but they wound up getting divorced in the process, but she decided to move forward. So we were able to, bad mouth the guys and what they were doing throughout the process. Men seem to never get, some of these women experiences. But so I would say if you can find someone that's going through it with you, have that buddy to kind of share, because you feel like no one really understands, because if you never went through it, you don't get the full picture. So that was very helpful. But I would say continue to live on purpose. That definitely helped me. Again, one of my eye-opening moments was people losing so much of their life and so much of their purpose and so much of their joy through it. So living on purpose, remembering that there's more to you than motherhood or giving birth to a child. I would never tell anyone to stop their journey. But at what cost? I would challenge some people to say, at what cost are you going to go through this? Because you're losing your marriage, you're losing your finances, you're losing your peace, you're losing your relationship. So to me, I think it does matter. And I think maybe even a pause in it. Maybe if you're not going to stop, maybe I need to pause, because this is causing me so much grief and fear and anxiety and depression and anger and hurt and resentment. All of those things, you go through all of that. And, they say a lot of stress inhibits fertility and makes you lose babies. So some of that stress you're putting yourself through, and anguish, mental anguish, is making you, that baby, potentially not be viable, or those eggs not be viable, or for you to lose your child. So I think sometimes we might have to take a pause and continue to live on purpose, because when you have something else to live for, it shifts your focus, it shifts your energy, it shifts your mindset. So continue to live on purpose and continue to love on purpose. I know a lot of people who go on to foster or adopt, and then now some of that anxiety or anguish diminishes, and now you're more, your body's more ready to give birth. And I'm sure you guys have seen, I know so many people who, once they decide I'm not going through this no more, they wind up pregnant. Or when they adopt or foster, they wind up pregnant, because that hyper focus, it definitely affects your mental and physical state. So that would be one of my things, to continue to live on purpose and love on purpose.
Thank you. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. So we're going to come over to Ashley. Ashley was one of my amazing clinicians at RAD. So wanted her to come because I think it's always important to just give a little education to folks, more from that provider standpoint. So I wanted to ask you first, how long should people really wait to get help?
Fair enough. So before I start talking, I want to say thank you for letting me be in this space with you all today. It's lovely to learn and hear your perspectives. So thank you for sharing it. It's really meaningful. So you can look up the definition of infertility online, right? So it's those outlying factors that become more important for people. So these stories are the perfect presentation of just that, right? So if you look at the information online, if you've been attempting pregnancy for 6 months and you're 35 or older, you should see a fertility specialist. If you're less than 35, wait a year, right? But that's so oversimplified. It's ridiculous, actually. So if your periods are irregular and your GYN doesn't know why, or your cycles are painful, or you're bleeding irregularly, or you've had a loss, or you've had a positive pregnancy test but it was faint, and then you don't know what to do next. I mean, just come talk to us, right? We're happy to see you, and there's so many variables, right, that folks deal with, whether it's ovarian structure issues, if it's hormonal issues, if it's a uterine anomaly that never got diagnosed, right? There's so many facets to what we look for, and just saying 35 or older, 6 months, under 35 a year, it's so oversimplified. So if you are concerned, just come talk to us. We're happy to see you and kind of go over what we're looking for and how we could potentially help you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you answered the second part of that already. Under what circumstances should a person try to see someone sooner rather than later, if there's questions or concerns. So, similar going off of that, what would you generally, again, recommend to a person who has concerns about fertility but isn't trying to conceive right now?
So, I will say that Delaware has made this question way more accessible for folks lately. So we see people now who will just come in, say that a lot of PhD candidates or students or whomever, right, they'll come in and say, I don't want a family right now, but I just want you to make sure I'm all right. How many years do I have before I need to be concerned? That's an amazing time to come see us. Some folks will come see us, not wanting children for 10 years, but they say, this is my person, we have all these travel plans and things like that, but, I want you to make my embryos, freeze them, and then I'll come back to them when I'm ready. Other folks will come to us if they're having health struggles, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever. They'll say, what are my options moving forward? So there's no right time to come see us, but there's so many planning opportunities if you get your foot in the door at the right time, right? So we can say, your ovarian function is beautiful. I don't see any issues with a diminished reserve. You have X number of years. Have a ball or go. We can make certain predictions on what timelines could look for you. And the other thing too is everything is able to be personalized. Right? We can adjust. We are not talking about, high cholesterol. We're this is your LDL, I'm going to give you this pill, and this is how I want you to fix it, right? So every person who walks through the door has had a unique experience getting to us, and will have a unique experience moving on through the process and after us. So everything can be personalized based on where your life is and what your plans are from the moment we meet you and thereafter.
I can attest to that.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So last question for Ashley, and then I'm going to come back around to Rep. Johnson. For anyone considering going to a fertility specialist, what could they generally expect when they're first coming in?
Feelings.
Yes.
Yeah, walking through the door is the hardest part. You will be met with a lot of people. You will be met with a whirlwind of tasks. You can expect to feel uncomfortable, right? Emotionally, physically. But in response to that, we make sure that you have a really strong network of folks to help you through those situations, right? So step one is pick up the phone. right? Write an email, send us a note. It's going to be hard to do. It's going to be hard to do. But try to do it. Those feelings will come up. Then we're going to call you. We're going to send you an email, whatever. Come on in. Let's get some information about you, right? So you'll meet with basically an intake person, right, who gets some understanding of, what life has been like for you to this point. You meet with a physician or a clinician, right? You'll get evaluations of your hormone levels. There'll be lots of labs. There's going to be procedural stuff, right? We're going to look in your uterus with fluid. We will get you through it, I promise. You will get comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? But expect a lot of unknowns, right, to become your normal. Expect to be supported. Expect to be, walked through those really difficult situations. But just expect the unexpected, right? And just kind of get comfortable sitting in it and knowing that you're not going to feel great, right? You're not going to feel great, but you have people around you who can take that I don't feel great and help you get to a place where, we're meeting you where you want to be with your hopes and how you want to build your family.
I appreciate you coming in because, again, it's like I always tell people I am a social worker. I ain't got no medical degrees. Now, I see social work as important because I see mental health is health. But it's always nice to have someone in the room that actually has the credentials, has the degree, and has the experience. So, last but not least, I wanted to ask Rep. Johnson to talk about House Bill 374. In addition to all the other hats that I have, I'm also an advocate. I'm very big on wanting to see policy changes so that way we can protect people's reproductive health, reproductive rights, and reproductive choices. So if you could tell me a little bit about what is House Bill 374 and what inspired you to introduce this important legislation.
Yes, absolutely. For little people like that. She said it all. So, House Bill 374, before I start, know that it passed the House, and it is now in the Senate, and it is scheduled to be heard on the Senate floor on Tuesday.
Awesome.
So I'm like, really, really excited. I'm pretty certain it's going to pass. So I have to find myself an orange outfit for Tuesday.
I'll be wearing my orange then.
So, all right. So I have my notes here. These are all my notes. So I'll share this with you. So after the Supreme Court, Supreme Court's 2022 Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision, 16 states had passed or attempted to pass fetal personhood bills. So then, this is what really set me on fire. February 16th this year, the Alabama Supreme Court declared that embryos created through in vitro fertilization should be considered children, and those who destroy them can be held liable for wrongful death. It lit me on fire, right? So I'm like, this shop is closed. We're not doing any of that stuff anymore. But I think about all of the other people, and you just talked about the process, right? Who aren't ready, who, find out now they need to do it, and like, what if this is not available for them because we lack the safeguards? The other thing I thought about it for myself was, if this was me 20 years ago, I told y'all how many embryos I had. Does that mean I'd be in jail right now? Like, what does that mean for me? And so I was scared. I'm like, oh my God, I got to do something. So I'm sending text messages. I'm like, Alexa, I just send the link because I was losing my stuff. So Alexa is our policy person. And she's like, well, Rep. Johnson, I'm like, yes, this is what we have to do. So that Alabama just really lit a fire under me. Before, you just kind of hear stuff, you, but then Alabama just really did it for me. So, information to know. In 2021, 86,146 infants were conceived through the use of assistive reproductive treatment. 86,000 babies. Like, that is wild. And as I shared, without IVF, I would not have Ian and Autumn. They wouldn't be here. And I want every couple who wants this to have those same opportunities and rights and safeguards, period. So what it does is that it will make sure that folks who want to have children and, want their dreams to come true because of all that, that the practitioners like Dr. Barmatt, like you, who help us get pregnant, that nobody's going to come for you and sue you or say you need to go to jail and all of this other stuff, right? So what it does specifically is that it clarifies that medical professionals who provide fertility treatment care cannot be disciplined for such services, even if such services are illegal or considered to be unprofessional conduct or unauthorized practice of medicine in another state, so long as the services are lawful in this state. Okay, so those, and I just feel for reproductive rights, and she feels too. I know exactly. Listen, sis, I got it. But so like, we'll say hypothetically speaking, like the whole personhood thing happened in Maryland. And families from Maryland come into Delaware to, get the treatment and whatnot. The physicians, the practitioners would still be safe here. It also prohibits healthcare providers from disclosing communication and records concerning fertility treatment without the patient's authorization in any civil action or proceeding, with some exceptions. It protects healthcare providers from out-of-state civil actions related to fertility treatment that is legal in Delaware, including the issuance of a summons or the enforcement of subpoenas related to such case. It creates a cause of action for recuperation of out-of-state judgments relating to fertility treatment that is lawful in Delaware. And it prohibits insurance companies from taking any adverse action against a healthcare professional who provide fertility treatment and services. And Delaware is amazing. So much support for this bill from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the Delaware Board of Nursing, certified midwives. So many people understood why it was important that we do this, to protect the rights for people who want to have families, but also, moreover, to protect our practitioners who will help us have our dreams come true. So that's down and dirty. That's 374. It'll be heard on Tuesday, and I'm pretty optimistic that it's going to be law. And I'm thrilled beyond belief, because when I get angry, when I think about it, I'm like, for the people who voted no, you might not be thinking about, okay, I'm a grandpa, so I'm good. I'm not having any more children. But what you're not thinking about is your lineage. You don't know what your grandchildren might come across. And don't you want them to have these same opportunities? And some people are so short-sighted with it. But even with the folks who voted no, it still passed the House. It passed committee in the Senate. And on Tuesday, it will be law.
And given the fact that it is so incredibly common for people to travel over state lines for reproductive health care, especially if they know that they feel like they're going to be going somewhere that they're cared about, is a big deal. So it's like, well, we may not see it too often, but a person could come from what is considered more of a conservative state to Delaware to seek care, to grow their families.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Rep. Johnson, for being an advocate for protecting reproductive rights.
Absolutely. I must do it. You know, I joke. I'm like, y'all, all this shot is done. It's shut down. Ain't nothing happening. But I can never forget my journey. Okay? And I think about all others who may not even have the same journey. Could just be like, I'm not ready to do this, so let's freeze these, right? So I want all of those people to have these opportunities, and I want our practitioners to be safe and be able to do it. So it's my absolute honor and pleasure, and my responsibility.
So that is the end of the prepared questions. I wanted to see if there are any questions from anyone in our audience today.
We done bared our souls.
Look, you all gonna get it. I'm sitting here like, y'all gonna make me mess up this makeup over here.
I have a question. Yes. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories. They definitely resonate with me. My very outspoken baby, who is a panelist. She is. She's a rad baby, so we actually did go through fertility. And you guys, thank you. You guys' stories, it resonated with me because me and my husband, we struggled. It was a lot. I'm not going to shed tears. But I think for me, it was one of those things that I didn't realize that I had fertility issues until I was trying to get pregnant, which I think is a common thing. And one of the hallmarks for myself was I had extremely painful periods since the time I got my first cycle. And I thought it was the norm. I was not under the impression that it's abnormal. And it's something that I inherited from my mom and probably from her mom too, that we just all accepted it. And they were increasingly getting worse, so I didn't know that was an indicator that there was actually something wrong with me, and that was linked up to my fertility. So I actually was diagnosed with stage 1 endometriosis, which was causing our infertility issues. I guess my question is, and I think Ashley, you touched on it, I guess that is something that maybe if I was a teenager, I probably could have gotten looked into. Not, obviously I'm not going to be trying to get pregnant when I'm a teen, but, I do want to be a mother at some point. So with my daughter now, I definitely want to look into seeing, is that something that is feasible, checking to see if she does have endometriosis at a young age, and what can we do to help with those, that issue before she makes a decision to have kids. I don't know if that's a weird thing or if that is
there's no such thing as a weird question, I want all of them. So it's the short answer is yes, right? And I think as women, we're just told to grin and bear it, and everything's fine, and wear your million hats, and be in pain, and keep going, right? And keep going, and be happy, and smile when you do it, right? So it's one of those situations where, yes, if there is pain, if there is something that, your daughter comes up against, just start talking, advocate, right? It's not okay for her to be in pain. It's not okay for, I was in pain for all these years. Nobody listened to me. I need you to listen to me, right? And if you have a clinician sitting opposite of you who is not listening to you, find a different one.
Yes.
Okay? Not all clinicians are created equal, right? It's like any other profession. There are a lot of wonderful folks out there, but if you don't feel heard, scream. And if you're still not heard, find somebody else, right? So if you feel evaluation is necessary, early intervention, amazing. Find yourself a great OBGYN, consult a fertility practice. There's suppression options for estrogen suppression medications that will help prevent the growth and spread of endometriosis.
Oh, wow.
So there's all kinds of stuff out there, but the long and short of it, and the best advice I could ever give, is just advocate for yourself. You are not meant to suffer. You are not supposed to just continue to endure traumatic experiences throughout your lifetime. It shouldn't hurt, right? Physically, emotionally, whatever the case may be, right? Advocate for yourself, talk to people, and if they're not listening, find somebody else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was when I was going to, they were checking my tubes and they were flushing and they were saying, this is incredibly painful. You should be, like, you're not going to be able to talk. I apologize. I was sitting there waiting for the pain and they were like, are you okay? And I'm like waiting for them to tell me. And then that's when they immediately wrote something down and looked at me. They're like, that's not normal. And I was like, oh, my periods are way worse than this.
Yeah.
It was like an indication to me for the first time in my entire life that my period, like, that should not have been the case.
Yeah.
So definitely just came to check in to see if that is something, since I do have a daughter and it's clearly something that runs in our family, just to prepare her whenever that time comes. So thank you.
Of course.
I have a question. I think throughout this, I think I connected with you the most. When you just said you wanted to kind of hide, I feel like that's kind of how I felt when I started this. I wanted to be invisible. Because, when people ask you, how were you doing? It just kind of reminds you that something is wrong each time. And you don't want to explain it to everyone. I think that's kind of where I am now. Even with my husband, I don't want to explain everything. And that part kind of makes me even angry. Like, why are you asking me? Like, can't you see that this is such a serious... Can you see how it's affecting me? I don't want to explain it to you each time. And I just wanted to know how you got to, I guess, that place of feeling like you could kind of explain everything.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing. I did feel like that when I was going through infertility care. My husband was very supportive, but he did not get it.
Yes.
Hands down, he did not get it. And it wasn't honestly till this year where we had a conversation, because we both have, social media platforms, and he does a podcast. He's like, yeah, I was there for you, right? And I'm like, and it was like a wow moment for him. But one of the things, in his defense, I was not comfortable sharing, and it came from, like you said, having an exchange. I remember him saying, well, if we're not meant to have a baby, we just won't have it. And if God wanted us to have it, we would have it. And it stung so deeply, because I did not feel like that. So I knew, to some degree, he wasn't my complete ally. It was him being a man of faith and thinking it had to happen God's way, and not tap into the infertility resources that we have, or fostering and things like that. So that was one of the ways he walked with me through the process, but it wasn't a lot of communication. It wasn't a lot of transparent feeling. But the part where I can own, and I would encourage you, is push through that feeling, because I did cheat him out of being able to support me because I didn't share. So I think there's going to be protected time where can we talk on Friday at this time where no one's around, where I just need you to listen to me. And I would honestly probably say, initially, don't wait for him to respond. Let him absorb it, because I feel like men are not always good at responding right in the moment, and they may say things that don't feel good or don't make sense. But make sure he hears you. And just tell him that you might not have all my answers, but this is how I need you to show up for me. And just be honest, and also give him some grace. And I don't know, I think with Latoya, the men are going through it too, but they don't walk through it the same way we walk through it. Some men are going to internalize, some people are going to get defensive. I know, in speaking with a lot of women, the men automatically, it's not me. So some of them won't want to go through some of the testing and things like that. And none of us talked about genetic testing. Sometimes it's genetics and you don't know it. It could be some, medication things you went through. So both people should be getting tested. But at the end of the day, I definitely think if counseling, if it gets too tough, you need a mediator so you don't shut down. He doesn't shut down. So y'all can have a conversation, because I do think it's going to be important for him to walk through it as much as possible with you, even if it doesn't always feel good. So I definitely can we have some protective time where you just hear me, and then you be honest about how you want him to show up for you, and make sure it is something that he's capable of. Hopefully you know your husband and what he's capable of. And I go through with my husband. I always with infertility. We sometimes can highlight the things that are not amazing about them, but if we remember those things that are amazing, and those are what strengths they do have, I have to remember that, because sometimes my husband could be so matter of fact, so short, and I'm like, well, did you hear me just say? I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm hurt. And he was like, well, what's for dinner? What? And I'm using that as an overgeneralization, but sometimes it is. So, like, you can't just have been here what I just shared, or you can't, you know what I'm going through. We expect that emotional outpouring where they're not always have the capacity or know-how to kind of show that in the moment. So that's why I said don't wait for him. Don't expect each time for him to pour his heart out too. So therapy, my husband and I have went to therapy. We wrote letters to each other because there was times where we couldn't talk. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to write this down because I need you to know. And I do remember that first time I wrote him a long letter, and it made a big difference. Because he was able to hear me in his own time and then come back to me in his own time. So those are a few things that I hope will help. But it's tough. But hopefully you can learn from some of our experiences to help navigate some of those pieces a little easier.
Can I add a little something to that? So one of the things that I use when I talk to folks in the office, especially with the partners, is I make them ask a question first. So if you have a statement, right, so like I'm feeling XYZ about what I have to do next Tuesday, before your partner may say anything, they have to ask you a question, a clarification question, or, you know, an additional detail question, something, before they can add their input. And I think I get that a lot when I have two folks in the room, and say, like, the woman will say to me, oh, my husband has a question for you, and he'll say, it's always, when can we have sex again, right? And I look at them, and I'm like, well, when do you want to have sex again, right? Like, you follow it with a question, right? And it takes away, I think it takes away the automatic social response that some men hold to keep their masculinity intact. And I think that by challenging with a question, whether it's for you or for your partner, it allows folks to see the other perspective a little easier.
And that was, I'm glad you said that. So that was one of my husband's responses, that he was always taught that the man has to be strong and has to be a problem solver, and he didn't know how to solve the problem. So his method was to move on. So consider that.
We talk about black men, and even so thank you all for being here today. Thank you again to each of the panelists who shared their stories today. As we prepare to come to a close, I want to highlight that we want to continue a conversation. Though we often think about women as those who are infertile, as we're hearing about, we must not forget that male infertility affects many desiring to become parents. And in fact, there's reports showing that male sperm counts have been actually falling. And male health contributes to the health of the pregnancy, which is something I have been learning more about as well. We must acknowledge that men in our society are impacted when their partners and wives struggle to become pregnant, just as Latoya highlighted. Infertility affects so many. As I stated, approximately 1 in 6 individuals globally are impacted by infertility. I hope today's conversation made it known that you are not alone if you are going through this process. Please feel free to check out the websites that are on the page, and then I think they're also over there on the table. Again, make sure that you're supported in this journey. I can't emphasize that enough, because it is such an isolating, lonely experience, but you're not alone. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to come to this important conversation. We look forward to hearing your feedback and thoughts on what other events we can do in the future.
Thank you.